Welcome to Change Starts Here, a Franklin Covey education podcast for K-12 leaders driving meaningful change through bold thinking, real stories, and proven strategies for lasting impact. Now here are your hosts, Kim Yaris and Eve Miller.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Change Starts Here, Research Conversations. I'm Kim Yaris, and I am here with my colleague, Eve Miller. If you are listening during the middle stretch of the school year, this conversation will likely feel especially timely because this is often the point when energy begins to dip and the initial momentum of the year has worn off. Like the demands are piling up, and all in all, motivation can just feel harder to come by for both staff and for students. So what we want to explore with you today is not how to push people harder, but how to engage the people that you lead in ways that actually work. So throughout this episode, we are going to share research that helps explain why motivation rises and falls and what leaders can do to support it more intentionally. We'll add, like always, we have a handout that goes along with this conversation, which you can download using the link in the show notes. And if you stay with us till the end, we're going to share 2 practical leadership moves that help cultivate ownership rather than compliance, and that helps to fuel agency and engagement in the people that you lead. All right, so that's the opener. I'm going to turn it over to you, Eve. Go ahead and kick us off.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Yeah, as we were thinking about this episode, it came out of that idea of that chart that we actually shared on an earlier podcast this season, just looking at the slump and then thinking about it and what leaders need. And really, going into the neurobiology of motivation, because I think we talk about motivation a lot, but when a student is disengaged, when a staff member is showing low motivation, low engagement, what does that really mean, right? So, that's a question that I love to think about the brain basis of it. So, but stay with us here, because when we dug into the research on why the brain, what happens in the brain that motivates or demotivates us, it really helped me to understand some of the practices that were the most powerful and why. So before we get into some of the neurobiology, let's get active in our brains, what it feels like to be motivated. So if you're at a place where you're able to do this, it would be really helpful to just engage a memory of being, first off, really motivated. So when was the last time you can imagine, close your eyes if that's helpful, but not if you're driving, being really motivated? And, that feeling of, it could be more of a feeling that you're really energized around a project. You're really energized around getting something done. And we're talking in that realm of work today. So if you can think of something within work, who was it that you were working with? What were you working on? What was an outcome of that? What was the feedback you were expecting in your mind, right? So just take a moment to bring that to mind. And also think about the last time that was. Was that recently or was it a while ago? Okay. Now, if you can keep that one somewhat activated, now think about the opposite. Think about a time in the recent past when you were feeling quite unmotivated. And again, it might not have struck you as, I feel unmotivated, but it struck you as just a lack of energy around a thing you needed to get done. There was not a lot of focus. You wanted to do everything else but that thing. You found yourself procrastinating it or, putting it off for other reasons. And so think about that situation. Think about, what the outcomes were, why, you might have felt unmotivated by it. Was it the situation, maybe the people you were working with on it, like the outcomes of it? Were you being forced to do this? Was it something that you wanted to do, but you didn't really have time for? Just bring that to mind too, what that project was or that task. So as we think about those, I think it's important to just kind of have some of those in mind so that when we talk about the biology, we can attach it to these examples. Because what's happening in both of these is this area in the brain called the nucleus accumbens. It is really the key area that's being activated. It's like the switch of motivation. So let's look at how the switch turns on and off. So first, Kim, we're gonna point to our brain. So right between your eyebrows, if you were to go in about 2 inches or about 5 centimeters, you would run into a blueberry or small grape size on an average adult center of the brain that's on both sides of your split in the brain. And that is what the nucleus accumbens is. So it's pretty deep in there. And it is, like I said, the motivation switch. What's really interesting about the nucleus accumbens when it comes to motivation is who it listens to, and then also who it talks to with that information. So the main 2 areas that it listens to is the dopamine centers. So the dopamine is telling the level. It's saying, this is important, right? It kind of brings it brings the party or the lack thereof. And then there's also the frontal cortex. So it's like, is this important? Should we choose this? It's telling you that information. And why the nucleus accumbens is really important to motivation is it takes the information of both the goal, like why this is important, why this is relevant, and it takes the dopamine of like, I want to do this. This is something I care about. I need to pay attention to this, the amplification, the noise of it. And it says, yeah, we need to do something. And so then it communicates out to places like the basal ganglia that actually activate the body into action. So all of those combined together, right? So we're bringing it back, and because we know what it's listening to be motivated, we have within that, we have both things that we have some lessons there to go through briefly. So is it relevant, right? So Kim, I'm sure you've run into this too, and maybe as you were thinking through like the different motivation and like when you felt kind of unmotivated, right? Like for me personally, as I thought about times when I was feeling unmotivated, it had nothing, like it was something I had to use reactive language, right? It was something I had to do, right? Yeah. I was required to do it. Was that similar for you?
It was completely that. Like whenever something feels imposed upon me, yeah, that's when I feel I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. Most least motivated.
No. Motivated. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a sliding scale, right? But like to that level of, and that speaks to the level of autonomy. And that's why when researchers have looked at motivation and a person's sense of autonomy, and it's not that like, if you think about your staff or yourself, right? Or students in your classroom, right? It's not that it's full autonomy, but it is choice. Having authentic choices that feel relevant, right? That gets the dopamine going too. That's that feeling of this matters, because that raises the dopamine. When someone can apply it to their life, there's an energy behind that.
Yeah.
It excites them. So it's not just like I was told to do, because there's going to be things that we're asked to do, but there's things that we need students to learn. There's things that we need staff to do. But having the opportunity to make it their own, or to connect with the purpose, that frontal cortex piece of the activation, right? Like, this matters to me. Like, I care about this. And did you experience that with the motivation or it didn't matter, or it did matter?
Yeah, well, choice was a biggie for me. It was like the thing that I chose to do, that I'm so excited about. It's the thing that lights me up. Like, oh, I can't wait to do this because it feels so important to me.
Right. Yeah. So it's just small changes, really, that can really make a difference in whether a person can find a way to engage with it that really is motivating or not, right? Because we've all needed to fill out well, okay, maybe I'll leave out paperwork because maybe there isn't like a path there. But if it feels really important, you are able, because there's all these different levels of motivation, you are able to motivate yourself to get it done, right? Like, so there is that level there. But then there's these other aspects. So if those listening are familiar with the self-determination theory, Kim and I love that theory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been around now since the 90s. And the self-determination theory talks about three different areas of intrinsic motivation that so many researchers have looked at across so many settings, including education and including students and staff. And they have found it is that feeling of connection to others. So that can be, we have a mission statement at this school and we are all working towards it. Or, that idea of collective efficacy, like we move learning, right? Like those moments where they feel like part of something bigger and they are an important member of that team, that's a huge piece. So that's one of them. That autonomy piece is another part of the theory, and efficacy, that feeling that I can do what you are asking me to do. And that's another thing that both engages, the things that the nucleus accumbens listens to, that feeling of like, oh, I can do that. Oh, I know how. Like, it's attached to that sense of efficacy. Like, I get why, I understand why this matters in my life, right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can act in my life, autonomy,
Yes.
towards this thing that matters, right? Or for this team that matters to me. So those are kind of like, those are the factors in more like the real world terms, the belonging, the efficacy,
Mm-hmm.
and the autonomy or choice, right? Like, so having those.
Yep.
And when you think about the reflection you did at the beginning, and you think about those elements were most likely there and feeling motivated. Like you had some choice over it. You were working with people who really, they were engaged around the same mission, or you felt like you had choice in what you were doing, or you felt like you could do this really well and you were a person who could do this and help out in, important ways. Like all of those things really motivate us. And when they're missing, that information coming in does not rise to the point where the nucleus accumbens says, okay, we need to take action. It just goes, meh, eh, let's see what's going on X, on Facebook instead. So, like there's other things, many other things are going to rise above that in motivating us. So what are your thoughts on that, Kim?
All right. So right now, I'm just thinking, in terms of takeaway, what I hear you saying is that motivation isn't a personality trait.
Right, right.
It's not something that we create through pressure or persuasion. It
Mm,
emerges when the brain experiences three things: choice, relevance, and connection. Did I get that right?
mhm. I mean, said in another way, choice and autonomy, relevance is definitely a part of choice,
Okay.
and efficacy
Okay. All
and
right.
motive, right,
So
and
when we
belonging.
Okay, so when we take all of those conditions and make sure that they are present, that's when motivation follows. So it's kind of like a byproduct of making sure that the conditions have all of those really important things: choice, relevance, connection, belonging, um, autonomy, all of the things that you've been talking about. So
Right,
when they're missing, even capable, deeply committed people struggle, right? And that's what you were showing us when you had us call that to mind, right? So
right.
there are times
Yeah,
that we're all motivated or unmotivated, depending.
yeah. And I love that you're calling this out, because when we think about it as not a personality characteristic and we think of it as biology, and biology that we can have an influence on based on the environment that we create for those that we lead, whether that's in a classroom, in a district, in a school, like thinking about those environments as a place that can truly generate motivation, but at a biological level, not, oh, these people, they're not, no matter, yeah, that's a very fixed mindset about those people. And it's just not true. Biology, it is just not true. We're all motivated by something, by, well, these things. So tapping into that is so powerful. I love that.
All right. So, and that's the great news here is that we can influence conditions, right?
Right.
There are things that we can do. So, right now, we're going to offer you two simple practices that you can use right away. So, really honing in on that idea of offering choice. So, whenever you can, think about where people can have some opportunities to raise their voice and say, yeah, that's the thing that I want to do, be it choosing a duty or, deciding which subject to teach or where to sit in the classroom if you're talking about students. So instead of prescribing solutions, offer meaningful options, like ask questions like, what feels most aligned to you? Or what makes the most sense to you? Or how would you like to approach this? Because even those small decisions, like where to begin, which strategy to try, how to tackle a task, signal trust and activate ownership. And when people feel trusted, motivation grows. Anything you would add to that, Eve?
I love that. I think just being aware of the paradigms, because I think in education there are these paradigms that we can get locked into very easily and say, well, I can't around that. Or these people, I have to, like, paying attention to where you feel like you really need to control and understanding where you can release, right? Like there are so many opportunities to release in meaningful ways. So starting with this belief that there's great capacity there and great opportunities to give more choice and autonomy, and
Yeah.
finding them instead of saying, that's not my situation. I would, but they're like this, right?
Yeah.
Or I would, but they would do that if I did that. Oh, the students would do this, right? Like
So,
looking for the opportunities, not looking for the ways to control.
yeah. And so the second practice is so aligned with what you're saying. It's like that co creation of the path forward. And
Woo!
when you're co creating, right, it means if I've always seen myself as in charge, it means I'm letting go of something, right? And so it's rather than deciding both the destination and the route, we stop, we invite reflection, and we ask, what outcome matters most to you right now, or what would progress look like from your perspective? And when people help shape that direction, motivation becomes intrinsic. Like they're no longer complying, they're contributing. So,
That just I've heard co-creation before, as I'm sure many listening have. I had not connected it to that idea of, well, of connection, of that sense of I am part of something bigger here. And,
yeah.
one of those big motivating forces. I hadn't thought about that as one of the reasons why it's so powerful. I
Yeah.
like that connection.
All right, listeners, we are coming toward the end. We want to remind you again that there is a handout that will take you through the whole journey that we've been here, through the research, through the practices, offers you some resources that will help you to learn more about motivation if that's what you're looking for. So we are so grateful that you've spent this time with us. We hope that you'll join us for our next episode, where we are going to continue to explore how to more effectively grow the capacity of others through whatever leadership role that you are in. Until then, take good care.
Bye, y'all.
Franklin Covey Education is a trusted partner in developing leaders from the classroom to the boardroom in over 8,000 schools in over 70 countries.